الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. My dear respected brothers and sisters, today I want to touch on a topic with regard to Tijarah or trade business ethics, which is quite commonly used and quite commonly needed in regards to what we do in a business setting. That is the topic of financing. This is something that businesses do require. I was reading on the chapter of debt in this book called At-Tarhib wa-Targhib, which is compiled by a sheikh called Imam Mundhiri rahimahullah. A great book. Tarhib and Targhib means encouragements, and those things that Targhib, it gives you a sense of encouragement and a sense of something that pushes you towards something. So when you read certain hadith from it, you start to feel the sense of interest in performing acts of deen. You start feeling the desire of getting the thawab and reward, and this is how it is. So tarhib or targhib, and the tarhib means admonition or those things that is warned. So that's the name of the book, Tarhib wa Targhib. Right, there's a nice little book and compilation of different ahadith around topics. Just like there are different ahadith book like Sahih al-Bukhari and Mishkat Musabih and Imam Muslim, Sahih Muslim and so on. So this is one of those books that was compiled as well. In that book, interestingly, he talks about, there's different ahadith and so on, but one of them caught my eye where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about the severity of taking a debt and taking a loan. And thereafter, it was mentioned about the dua. There are du'as of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve a person from loans because it's something that is grave. In fact, in one hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that he would not pray behind the janazah of someone who is owing a debt, right? And he would wait for the loan to be paid off before he cleared the debt. But in other hadith, and that's why the completeness of the deen, and I will talk about that topic in a further discussion, inshallah. But for here, there are a hadith as well that talks about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that a person, and I'm paraphrasing here, a person who takes a debt or takes a loan and has the intention of fully repaying it and wants to repay it, then he has the help and the awn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his kafil and his wali, that person who will take or sort the debt out for the person. So Allah himself stands as a guarantor, for the person for taking a debt, and he will definitely inshallah forgive the person and also repay the debt of the person probably in this world and the hereafter. So it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the burden of a debt. The word debt itself, qard, in Quran and Hadith, right? It's something that basically a weight that is placed on your shoulder around your necks, right? And it's something that's severe and hard and difficult, and a lot of people are actually suffering from that, especially when it comes to business and borrowing and these kind of things. But the interesting thing that I wanted to mention here is that in one athar or a statement of Aisha radiallahu anha, that she mentions about under the same points of taking a loan and Allah helping that person to pay off the loan once he's sincere and he's trying his best to do so. Right? It says there that the author is saying that Aisha radiallahu anha took a small loan. When she was asked, why do you have a loan? Because you don't have the need of a loan. She said, because I hope to get the awn and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah promises the help of someone who is in debt. So I took a loan so that I get this benefit of Allah's help in my affairs. So it shows too that there is a balance, and I'm not saying that go ahead and take massive loans and not be mindful of it and the need of it, and also what is the effect that it comes and the difficulty of paying back a loan. You do have to make smart business choices, and you have to be considerate about the person that you're borrowing the money from, because borrowing money itself is something that you have to have a lot of honesty, you have to have a lot of integrity, you have to try your best to be working towards the payment and repayment of that loan. So that is something that is definitely so, and it is a necessary, a necessity of a believer, a trustworthy believer. And that's why some of the words that is mentioned is at-tajiru saduqul amin, a person who is trustworthy and truthful. Ma-siddiqin wa shuhada wa salihin would be amongst the pious predecessors, and the shaheed and the those martyrs, and also the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of his ethical codes with regard to business affairs. So there's no way I'm undermining the need for the severity of taking a loan, but similarly the flip side of it, which you don't hear as often, is that the Sahaba radiallahu anhu would take loans to try to improve their own financial status, or to ensure that their business is running and the affairs of the business is flowing, and there's cash flow issues that are not being met, and there's investments that is taking place and so on, because there is a reality for the strength of a Muslim and the believer, as the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, "Al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa habbu ila Allah min mu'min al-dha'if wa fi kulli khayr." Mentioned this before, that the strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the weak one, and in every one of them is goodness, but obviously the one who is strong, and like the hadith that we've mentioned before, that yadul ulya khayrun min yadul sufla, the upper hand is better than the lower hand. It is because economic strength is something as well, and a strong believer is one that is economically sound as well. Like, can give back to society, can strengthen society, can spend on others, can be able to help and to be a sense of comfort to others because of their wealth. So this is the qualities and the of a Muslim businessman who has that understanding of his responsibility with regard to his wealth and his business as well. So you'll try hard to make sure that you have a successful business, and you'll ensure that that business is beneficial for everyone, and it's not something that will become a hindrance or take you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Rasul, but it should be an enhancement that takes you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that being said, the point I'm making here too is that loans are something that is very heavy and very weighty and very difficult. But at the same time, it's something that is allowed in Islam, and something you have to be very mindful and careful when you're doing it. But it's also something that the Sahaba radiallahu anhu showed us that they did. And it is for the economic viability of business. Because many a times, for those people who are in active business, you do need to be able to borrow and lend, and to be able to buy, to bring in goods, and to import, export, whatever the business venture is. And similarly, to be able to have that process flowing without any major issues, things like construction and so on. A lot of times there's a lot of money that is being invested in it, but sometimes there's not enough flow of cash flow, right? And because of that, a lot of the things become stagnant, and you're not able to then progress because of financing. So financing is a real thing, and it's something that we do need to develop more of, especially here in Trinidad and Tobago and all over the world, because financing is how we can further our business goals. And this is something that is important. I was doing a paper on Friday. I had a LLB law exam, and one of the questions that was there is that if a person's business structure, what kind of business structure is it's the best for somewhat of a new person starting off in business and looking to enhance their business, and also set up a structure in such a way that they will get financing, right? So that was the answer to that really was to set up a limited liability company. So the liability itself is protected, so there's not major risk to the company. The company itself bears the liability of risk or any type of problems that might come up, like suing and problems that happen in the real world. I'm not saying that as right. I'm just saying it happens. So in there, one of the things is to be able to have better options of financing, you should have a company, because people would like to see a structure when they're financing something. And that comes to the topic of banks. Banks are the ones supposed to, lend money. That's what they do essentially. That's how they make the most amount of their money, is by lending and investing. So what they do is they lend money and then they collect back interest-based profits. So that itself is the structure that is immoral. It's haram. It's not allowed, and but that's what they do. So that becomes a very difficult and severe situation for believers. Now the question that arises is, what are the solutions? What options do we have as believers when we do need to get financing, and we need to try to get it from somewhere that is halal and allowed and permissible? So there are structures, and I'll try to go through some of them right now to give us an idea of how the Islamic product is, the Islamic system is, and that's how an Islamic bank is actually structured. Now, there are a lot of difficulty and bureaucracy and problems in setting up Islamic banks, and that's why it takes a
You're not hearing you, Mufti. Mufti, are you hearing me?
testing. Okay, just give me a minute whilst I solve some of these problems. I don't know what happened there just now. The
Yeah,
video's right. You can see the video. Yes. Where did you all lose me? Where did I reach? And you lost the feed of the discussion. Can someone just talk to me on the thing so I'll hear them?
you have reached the part with the banks. taking the interest-based loans from the banks.
Great. One of my mics went off, apparently. So further, tell me, did you hear anything about Suriname? Uh, yeah, did you hear the part about Suriname? Did you hear that and the different options in Malaysia and all these things? Not Suriname. Okay, I'll continue. But you heard me say the word Malaysia and Indonesia and stuff. No? Okay. All right. I think that should be okay. We should be back up and running, inshallah. Yeah, so I was saying to you guys is that let's see this. Many things is you just have to remember to charge all these devices because that's be a issue. Okay, so I was saying to you guys is that Islamic banks is something that continuously needs to develop, and it's something that the Arab world and the Muslim world is trying to further that interest or that need for developing Islamic financial systems. Because think about it, if you can go to a bank, Islamic bank, and you can get a loan, and then that person will look at the obviously needs and what you would be trying to achieve and the business plan and so on, and then give you a loan and allow you that process of making your business a full scale, well developed system. And obviously, that's going to become beneficial and it will be helpful. So, things like that is what the rules of a bank is. Just hold 1 minute. It's on the desk there. Right? Okay, yeah. So I was saying, so in the that's one of the things that needs consistent development from the Muslim world and the Ummah, and it's something that is a need and something that again has to tie into the conventional system, and that's what I was saying too is that part of the Islamic banking system, it's very hard to implement correctly because there is a, a meshing that has to take place with a corporate on Islamic riba based or interest based system, which is very difficult to achieve properly. And there are a lot of challenges for Islamic banking system. So it's not just a foolproof, hey, we're going to Islamic bank and that's it, we are comfortable with it. And the thing about it is some people have actually tried in a few years before is opening up an Islamic window, Islamic bank within a conventional bank. So Clico had something like that here locally in Trinidad and Tobago, and that whole system fell when Clico fell, right? But that was an interest of Muslims to be able to have riba free loans and these kind of things. So it was something that started up and was pretty productive. I've heard, I've not seen anything from it because it closed down before I would have been able to see or had some type of interest in it. So I wasn't able to see anything about it. But essentially, that's what Islamic banks are trying to do. They're trying to develop the system further and try to ensure that Islamic financing is an option for Muslims so that they can thrive in business affairs and they can continue working their way up to become stable financially and help the Ummah build. So that's something that is noble and something that we should continue talking about and encouraging. So places like Malaysia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, they have those interests and they are trying to develop Islamic banking further. There are a lot of persons that are now putting in the effort into developing it more and more, so it becomes further Islamic Sharia based, and that can benefit everyone. So in our region, I was saying in Suriname, there's one bank called Amana Bank, and that was a project of the Islamic Development Bank, that they set up a bank and they allowed that process to start. So to allow then, inshallah, Islamic banking to happen in Suriname. So I've heard talks about the interest of Guyana and Trinidad, but it's not really so much of a on the burner kind of topic. So it's something that we have to continue pushing, developing, talking to this different types of dignitaries and people who would have that interest in furthering the Islamic banking system to allow Muslims to develop themselves. So one of those things is I spoke to personally recently certain persons in the government and asking them for that as part of the needs of the Muslims, especially when it comes to these things of politics. And what's interesting, Islamic banking is something that is needs a lot of further development as well, and also Islamic politics. So politics in itself needs a lot of development in itself, because those are two topics that have a major need for Muslims' affairs, right? And that's why there's one of these modern kind of sciences within fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence is called fiqh al-aqalliyat, right? The fiqh of those persons who are a minority in a place. How do you develop systems that does not go in contrary to the deen, but yet help them to be able to live in this world and to contribute to the world as well in a beneficial way that helps everyone. So that is something that is really, really interesting. I do actually have a lot of interest in these topics. So politics is something that I delving a lot, um, in the sense of what is the Islamic positions on these matters and how do you resolve some of the issues and interests that we can help the Muslim Ummah and help the believers, help the persons who are here, who are striving for the goodness of society in its large. But yet there are some things that might contradict their faith. So we have to be able to find the ways. And that's essentially the job of the ulama, that they try to develop further engagement with the world that they live in and make it halal or make it permissible, make it tayyib for the believers to be able to continue to benefit. And the second thing is that Islamic finance is something that is really important to consistently develop so that there are methods of benefit to the Ummah, inshallah. So that being said, let me go on to the slides, because those slides is today and it was supposed to be the discussion of today. All right, so let me get onto that for you guys. You should be seeing the screen there. So let's talk about a few Islamic financing options, solutions to Islamic financing. So essentially, a bank will take some of these packages, these systems that was used in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then further develop it into making different types of products that allows financing. Right. So one of them here is that the solution includes adopting profit sharing methods. Right. So this is one of the very common Islamic systems that is used. It's called murabaha and musharaka. So a partnership and one of partnership, two different types of partnership essentially. So the first type of partnership is we call mudaraba. Right, mudaraba is mutual between partners or people, parties that provide the capital. One provides the capital, and the other provides the expertise and management. So there's a financer, and he comes and he says, you know what, let's do a business, or whoever comes first with the idea, it doesn't matter. And then they come and they say, hey, let's do this. You can do really good job in construction, for example. You have a crew, you can work. I can get jobs for you. So two of them come together and they have the, like for example, the financer has the contacts maybe, and he has the financing. So he'll set up the contractor to get all the equipment and all the different things and so on. And then when they finish, they do their work, then they split the profit accordingly. So this is the system. Right? Profits are shared accordingly to prearranged ratios, while losses are borne by capital provider unless there's a negligence or breach of terms by the manager. So the person who finances, he understands that, you know what, I am basically giving that person that go to develop the business, to work, to establish. So you have to have obviously trust in that person, a relationship, something that's written, a contract that helps, so that person doesn't, become negligent, or even would take away or be negligent in his fiduciary responsibility. So his responsibility he's supposed to have in the business, he will fulfill that. And the second thing is musharaka. So the first one is mudaraba, where really generally it's a financer and the other person is the one who does the work. The second one is musharaka, where it's a partnership where both parties are equally vested in the actual running of the affairs. So here, both parties contribute capital and share in profits and losses based on their investment. This is a joint venture where partners share in both risks and reward. So this is a way and method as well of financing. So two people come together, one of them don't have the full financing, so they split it up. Like for example, someone was telling me recently that they wanted to do dates, right? Dates is something that is very beneficial. It is something that is healthy, and so many different benefits of dates. So they were saying a full container of dates from Saudi Arabia can cost like about $500,000. So they were saying to me that, we can split up the container into two different parts, one in mudaraba and one in musharaka. So the example of that, so half of the container of dates will be in the relationship of a mudaraba, where one person goes and he does the work and the other person puts in the financing. And the other half of the container is musharaka. So these are, I'm giving you examples of how it can work. You do a musharaka contract where half of the container is both of them investing a certain amount of money, and from that half of the container or the stock, which you will actually itemize and so on, will be whatever profits come for it is both shared, and the losses come from that part is both shared. And obviously you will have trust in the system, because this is something that you are both going into. So this is a example of it, musharaka and mudaraba. Right, so different types of partnerships that are implemented, and even with our conventional law, there are this is something that is very common, right? You can do that. You can do it on musharaka. You can do a partnership agreement. In fact, one of the types of companies that you can register in our AGLA or registry department is that type of structure, which is a partnership. And in the partnership, you can put your terms and conditions accordingly to make it Islamic. And this is why we have to have more knowledge of how Islamic structures are formed, so that parties can come together. So you do find people who have financing options. They have money, for example, and they want to invest in something so that, obviously that money grows and that benefit comes to them. Remember, money stays in an account actually decreases through inflation. You have less buying power. So if you do consider you want to increase your wealth and at least manage it to be having affairs of spending power, you will invest it in other things. Keeping money stagnant is one of the really detriments of things. Saving money is one of the things that we were brainwashed in as people growing up. But the reality is that's not how money works. People reinvest to be able to gain more money. That's how it works. So that being said, sometimes people even invest money in different types of halal schemes or halal practices or halal structures, but they don't get back anything from it, or they get like 2.5% and less, 2% and 1%, and these kind of things returns. Now that itself is not very business productive. It's not productive as a business person or from a financial perspective, because remember, every year 2.5% you'll have to be paying towards your zakah. So imagine you have $100,000 invested, right? And you only get back 1% of that from the capital cost. Just giving figures, right? 1% of that, and you at the end of the year have to pay obligatory 2.5% on that $100,000. So think about it. Is that, from a business point of view or financial point of view, I'm not saying that the paying of zakat is a problematic. In fact, that brings barakah, that brings goodness and so on. But what I'm saying is, if a businessman is trying to increase his wealth, he would try to get more than 2.5% for sure, right? Or at least get that 2.5% so that he can pay his zakah and his capital cost doesn't go down. And furthermore, inflation does affect by percentages every year, and people are not mindful of the difficulty of inflation. That's because of the interest-based system. Inflation hits heavily towards people's buying power. So these are some of the concepts. I hope that is beneficial for people to go and further, inshallah, because it's something real, and we need to further engage our understanding of financing and how it works as well. So the two things is mudaraba, murabaha, musharaka. Sorry, mudaraba, musharaka. The third one here is murabaha. Murabaha is cost plus financing. So cost plus financing, where the murabaha is a sale contract where the seller discloses the cost of the item and adds a known profit margin. So for example, he buys an item for $100 and he's selling it for $125. So this is a known figure that he's putting. He's putting a markup of 25 to 45%, depends on where along the scale of financing or selling, because some people would want to sell at a very cheap put 10% and move it fast so you get more quantity, and some people will put a higher markup and you sell over, or you may be able to navigate accordingly. So percentages are something that's important. So here it's something that's known, and so for example, people have had 15%, 25%, for example. Do you all know that groceries? Give me a little quick reply. What is the average? What is the average markup that a grocery would put on items? Let me see a quick message. Let me see how much my class is following their general financial literacy aspects. Come on, come on. Let's see who's here. Who's answering? 40%. Anything else? Anybody else? So in these kind of scenarios, it's really good to understand how this system works, because we are the ones who spend our monies, hard-earned monies, and we can find ways of even getting some profit out of the system, because that's how it works, right? Groceries, general groceries, they would have like an average of 25%, 30%, 20%. They fluctuate according to some of the items that they have. And they might have sometimes very rare 15%. So imagine you're taking an item and you're paying 25% or more on this item, right? So if you're doing that, you every time you buy something, you're increasing the amount of spending that you're doing, right? So what you do for that is you buy wholesale. This is the Islamic trade system too that we have neglected, where people come together and they buy on the wholesale market, and then they split it up amongst each other and have a saving. So that's why wholesale is always better, because sometimes you can't buy in stock, but the reality is bartering is something that you can do. Somebody buy a whole bag of flour, and then they split up the flour into different bags, and then they buy flour and then you exchange it for oil and these kind of things. So you can do that amongst yourselves. Or furthermore, another system is that you come together and you buy all essential products, and then you split it up between each other to try and formulate a saving towards everybody, because there are some staple things that everybody will use, things like different on the diet of many people, but things like rice and flour and meat and chicken and all the different types of foods, vegetables and so on. So if you do have a system like that that allows cooperation, that people come towards, they will say. In this product I was talking about, the third product is murabaha, is generally where a financer gives the money and there's a known markup. So 25%, okay, that's what you're selling the item for. The buyer agrees to pay this price either immediately or over deferred payment time. There's no interest involved since the transaction is based on an agreed upon price, not a loan with interest. So what happens is, you can sometimes do that, right? Murabaha, cost plus financing, where, for example, I need a bed, and I go to someone and say, hey, I need a bed to buy now, but if I go to buy it from, with the interest-based transaction, obviously it'll be haram, and I don't want to do that. So what is my options? So you go to that person, you said, you buy it for me, $4,000 or $2,500 for the bed. You pay cash, and I will pay you I'll buy that bed from you, and I will pay $3,000, because I rather pay the halal way. $500 goes to your pocket, you benefit from it, I benefit from the time that I have to pay it out, and that's a benefit that comes to both parties. Instead of giving Republic Bank and Lloyd's Bank and this bank and that bank the profit and let them grow millions and millions of dollars, obviously, which is haram as well, and interest based. No, this one is murabaha, which is cost plus financing. So you give that person that item and they pay back for it over a course of time. Now it's fixed. It doesn't change with time. Like, for example, if it takes a year, it takes a little extra month or 2 months, it doesn't change the capital amount that he owes. So this is the way that the system works. Okay, moving forward. Sorry, I was going on to so many different things, right? The third thing is a solution called Ijara. Ijara is leasing, which is basically renting something. Ijara refers to an Islamic lease contract where the bank buys the leases and leases an asset to the customer. So again, you have a fixed rental to pay. Ownership remains with the bank, right? Islamic bank here we're talking about, but the customer enjoys the benefit of the asset. At the end of the lease, the customer may have the option to purchase the asset or an agreed price. So this generally does happen, and you can actually have this method found in some of the conventional systems as well, right? You do have to just look at the contract one more time, but leasing is an option for a person to buy an item, and because you're essentially renting with an option of buying to the end. So this is something a lot of businesses actually do with leasing options. So it comes out of as a expenditure from their business, which gives them the benefit of a tax exemption, and with that they're able to use a vehicle, buy a vehicle, and even sell over the vehicle or buy over the vehicle at the end at a lower price because it'll be used. So at least the usage of that vehicle as well. So this is a real option and something to consider as well when it comes to certain things. The other thing is sukuk, Islamic bonds. Islamic bonds. So bonds are something that are traded and used as well to give some type of stability to the financial system and give that assurance of payments, and if something goes wrong, so it's a basic guarantee that takes place with banks. So there's so many governments, they have this what they call bond system, but Islamic bond system obviously is one that people put money into. A bond is generally a lot of times governments sell bonds, and then what happens is that the person can now even sell that bond to someone else because it's a measure of worth, right? And you can take the bonds as well. So in the Islamic system, what they will do is they'll take that money and then they will reinvest it in other things, and then grow that hedge or that money that is invested. So that's something that had been a practice of Islamic banking systems. So sukuks are Islamic financial certificates similar to bonds, but structured to comply with Islamic laws. They represent ownership in a tangible asset or a business venture, and investors earn return derived from the asset's performance, not interest system. So, what's interesting about Islamic systems is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that أَحَلَّ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal bay and trading, and has made riba haram, has made interest-based systems haram. So people ask this question, and detractors, they say, you know what, it's the same system, but it's profit sharing, and this one is based on a percentage and is what you would call a riba or interest-based percentage. But the reality is that Allah has a system of how He wants something to do. So, for example, not a great example, but one that comes to my mind is if a person goes and he says he's praying salah in the opposite direction to the Qibla. Right? And he's saying, I'm doing exactly the same, proper timing, proper gesture, proper place and direction and everything. And he's saying, but it should be allowed or Allah should accept it, because Allah says himself, فَإِنَّمَا تُوَلُّوا فَإِنَّمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, you will find the direction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's basing it on this Quranic ayah, and he's saying, no, I'm not going to face the Qibla. You'll say, but yes, that is true. It is correct that it is the same outcome that you are praying, and you're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed a system in that place, and that you have to face that direction. You can't choose, because Allah says to face Mecca and Mecca, to face the direction of the Kaaba, right? The Baytullah. So you can't now choose to say that, you know what, I am doing the same thing, the outcome is the same, I'm still praying, but so Allah should understand it. It doesn't work like that. So what you should say is that Allah has a system that He has, He inherently hates, which is this one of riba, and one that He allows, which is that of trade and goodness. The fifth one is Qard Hasana, a benevolent loan. Qard Hasana is a very good way as well, very practical as well, is that you go and you just get a loan. And the person gives you a loan interest free, without any markup, without any interest, without any issues. And that's meant to help someone in need. The borrower repays the principal amount without any additional charges, fulfilling the Islamic requirements of lending without exploitation. So it's just a person lending you money without any returns or any benefits. And this is actually a very benevolent and very good act to do. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open up our ummah so they can consider these options to help those who may need. And then the sixth option here is istisna, manufacturing contract, where istisna is used in projects financing, where one party finances the construction or manufacture of goods. The buyer pays for the item in installments as it is being constructed, and the seller delivers it upon the completion of that item. So it's basically you paying upfront for an item, and then it's being made. So that's commonly found in things like carpentry and construction and so on. You put a certain amount forward, at least there's a down payment and so on. There's no interest involved, as the payment is tied to the progress of the project. So this is also an actual way. Seventh thing, and I think this is the last one, slide, Wakala agency agreement. Right? In Wakala agreement, an investor appoints a financial institution as their agent to invest funds on their behalf. The agent charges a fee for managing the funds, but there's no interest involved, as profits are shared based on the actual returns from investment. So this Wakala system is a lot of times what a bank will do to be able to take money of those who want to get investments. So they will put their money in there, and then afterwards the people who are borrowing will come as a murabaha option with the bank, or the person who is the wakil, the person who is setting up that system, and then everybody then benefits accordingly to what their needs are. And the last one is buy salam, which is forward sale. Buy salam involves the purchase of goods for delivery in the future. The buyer pays the full price upfront, and the seller delivers the goods at a later date. So this is like agricultural stuff and so on. You pay them upfront, and then they go and produce it. This type of contract is often used in agriculture or manufacturing, and ensures that no riba is involved, since the price is set and paid in advance. So these are some of the Islamic systems. Some of them do have like intertwined parts. So one would be in one part, the other one would be in the other part, and that allows financing from my Islamic point of view. So this is something that I hope that you all benefited from, inshallah, and we could further discuss it later on, inshallah. But we'll end there for now. As we know, Islam has a beautiful, perfect example for all of areas of our lives. So we need to look at it, inshallah, and try to learn more, and try to adapt our systems, and even consider building systems like this or structures like this that helps others in fulfilling the Islamic requirements of financing. Jazakumullah khairah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.